The sun rose slowly over the wide Arizona sky, painting the land with shades of gold and orange. The air was dry and the earth smelled of dust and wild sage. On the edge of this land stood a small ranch owned by a quiet man named Thomas Grady. He was in his late 30s then, tall, kind-eyed, and known by everyone around as a man of few words but deep heart. He lived alone on his ranch after losing his family to illness years before. His only companions were his horses, a few cattle, and the open desert that stretched as far as the eye could see. One summer morning, while checking the fences near the river, Thomas heard something faint, a cry, soft and frightened. At first he thought it was an animal caught in a trap, but as he moved closer, he found two small figures hiding under a cluster of mesquite trees. They were two young Apache girls, one around 10 and the other about 6. Their faces were pale with fear, their clothes torn and dusty. They looked lost, tired, and hungry. Thomas knelt beside them gently. "Hey there, it's all right," he said softly. His voice was calm and his eyes were kind. "I'm not going to hurt you." The older girl looked at him carefully, holding her little sister close. She didn't speak at first, only stared with wide brown eyes that showed both courage and pain. Slowly she whispered, "We don't have a home." Thomas didn't know what had happened, but he could see they had been through something hard. He gave them water from his canteen, and after a long pause, the older girl finally said her name was Nayeli, and her little sister was Taji. Their parents had been taken by sickness, and they had been wandering for days, trying to find someone kind enough to help them. Thomas didn't hesitate. "You can stay at my ranch," he said, "at least until we figure something out." That night, for the first time in a long while, the small house at Grady Ranch was filled with laughter. The girls sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets, eating warm stew while Thomas repaired a broken toy horse he found in the barn for Taji. Nayeli watched him quietly, still unsure why this man, a stranger, was helping them without asking for anything in return. Days turned into weeks. The sisters slowly began to trust him. They helped him with chores, feeding chickens, brushing the horses, carrying water from the well. Thomas taught them simple things: how to mend clothes, how to ride a horse, and how to plant small vegetables in the dusty earth. The ranch became a home again, filled with warmth and new beginnings. Over time, the three of them formed an unlikely family. Nayeli, though young, was wise and careful. She liked to read the few books Thomas had on his shelf. Taji, full of energy, followed Thomas everywhere, asking questions about everything she saw. Thomas, who had once believed his heart had no more room for love, found himself smiling again. He often thought of how life had given him a second chance, not the one he expected, but maybe the one he needed most. The girls began to call him Uncle Thomas, though he never asked them to, and every time they did, he felt something deep inside him heal just a little more. Years passed this way. The ranch grew stronger, and so did the bond between them. Thomas never treated the girls as charity. He treated them as family. He made sure they learned everything they needed to be strong and independent. He taught Nayeli how to handle a ledger, how to trade fairly at the local market, and how to care for the animals. He taught Taji how to ride faster than the wind and to never be afraid of falling, but one thing Thomas never forgot was that the world outside wasn't always kind to people like Nayeli and Taji. Some neighbors were not understanding. They whispered behind his back, wondering why a white rancher was raising 2 Apache girls. Thomas ignored the gossip. He believed in kindness over judgment. "People talk," he'd say to Nayeli. "Let them. What matters is what we do, not what they say." When the girls grew older, Thomas made a hard decision. He knew they needed to see more of the world than just his ranch. With help from a local missionary woman he trusted, he arranged for them to attend a school in town where they could learn English, arithmetic, and other skills that would help them one day stand on their own. The day they left, the ranch felt painfully quiet. Thomas stood at the gate as the wagon rolled away, carrying the sisters toward a new life. Nayeli looked back, her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. "We'll come back, Uncle," she said. "We promise." Thomas nodded, his heart both proud and heavy. "I'll be here," he said. "This will always be your home." The years that followed were long and lonely for Thomas. He worked the ranch by himself again, though it never felt quite the same. Sometimes he would hear laughter in the wind and imagine the girls running across the yard like they used to. He kept their small wooden toys on a shelf above the fireplace and dusted them every Sunday. Seasons passed. The old man in town who sold him supplies would sometimes ask, "You still waiting for those girls, Tom?" Thomas would smile a quiet smile. "Patience is a good friend," he'd say. Deep down, though, he often wondered if they would really come back, or if life had carried them too far away. 15 years slipped by. The ranch aged, and so did Thomas. His hair turned silver, his hands rough and lined from years of labor. But his spirit stayed strong. Every evening he sat on his porch watching the sunset melt over the hills, thinking of Nayeli and Taji, where they might be, what kind of lives they might have built, whether they ever thought of him. And then, one early autumn evening, something remarkable happened. Thomas was fixing a broken gate when he heard horses approaching from the ridge. 2 riders appeared, moving gracefully through the dust. As they came closer, his heart began to pound. He could tell from the way they rode, steady, confident, that they weren't strangers. When they finally stopped before him, the dust settled and the world went silent. There they were. 2 grown women, strong, smiling, their eyes shining with both tears and joy. "Uncle Thomas," Nayeli said softly, dismounting her horse. "We told you we'd come back." For a long moment, Thomas couldn't speak. His throat tightened, his eyes wet. All he could do was nod, his hands trembling slightly as he reached out to greet them. That night, as the stars filled the Arizona sky, the ranch once again glowed with light and laughter. The past had come home, not as children in need, but as women of courage and heart. Thomas realized something powerful that evening, that kindness given in one moment can echo through a lifetime. And though the years had changed them all, the bond they shared remained untouched by time. When Nayeli and Taji returned to the ranch, it felt as if time itself had paused to watch their reunion. The sunset spread a soft orange glow over the open land, the same way it had when they were children running across the fields. But now they were grown women, confident and graceful, and Thomas could hardly believe the transformation. He stood on the porch, his weathered hands gripping the wooden railing, trying to find words. The sister stepped closer, smiling through tears. Nayeli's hair was long and dark, braided neatly, and her eyes still carried the same steady kindness she had as a child. Taji was lively as ever, her laughter bright and free, echoing across the quiet yard. Thomas finally found his voice. "You kept your promise," he said softly. Nayeli nodded. "We never forgot. This was always our home." That evening, the 3 of them sat around the old kitchen table, the one that had once been too big for their small family. The smell of stew filled the room, and the flicker of the firelight made everything feel alive again. They talked for hours and about the years gone by, about the people they met, the things they learned, and the roads that led them back here. Nayeli told Thomas that she had worked as a teacher in a nearby town, helping Apache children learn both their own language and English. Taji had become a skilled horse trainer, working on ranches across the state. "Every time I saw a horse like yours, Uncle," she said with a grin, "I thought of the day you taught me how to ride. I fell 3 times that day," Thomas chuckled. "And you got back up 4 times. That's what I remember." They laughed together, the sound warm and familiar. For the first time in many years, the house didn't feel lonely. The sisters had returned not as children in need, but as strong, capable women who had carried his lessons with them through life. After dinner, they all stepped outside. The sky was filled with stars, more than Thomas remembered seeing in years. The land was quiet except for the soft hum of crickets and the gentle breeze moving through the grass. "You kept the ranch just the same," Nayeli said, looking around. "It feels like nothing has changed." Thomas smiled faintly. "Everything changes," he replied. "But the heart of this place, well, that's the same. Maybe because of you 2. Over the next few days, the sisters stayed at the ranch helping with chores, cleaning the barn, and fixing fences that had grown weak with age. It was almost like the old days again. They rode the horses together in the mornings, laughing as they raced across the fields. They cooked meals and told stories at night, sometimes singing the same songs they had sung as children. Thomas watched them with quiet pride. He could see how much they had grown, how life had shaped them without taking away their spirit. He realized that his kindness all those years ago had come full circle, that the love he had given freely had returned to him, stronger than ever. One afternoon, as they sat by the river, Nayeli turned to him. "Uncle Thomas," she said softly, "we've always wanted to know something. Why did you take us in that day? You didn't even know us." Thomas looked at the rippling water for a long time before answering. "Because someone once helped me when I had nothing," he said. "I never forgot that feeling. To be seen, to be cared for when the world feels cold. When I saw you two, I thought maybe it was my turn to give that gift forward." Naili's eyes filled with tears, and she placed her hand gently on his. "You didn't just help us," she whispered. "You gave us a family." Thomas smiled, his eyes misty. "And you gave me one back." That night, the sisters brought out a small wrapped package. "We made something for you," Taji said excitedly. When Thomas opened it, he found a beautifully carved wooden horse, almost identical to the one he had repaired for them when they were children. On the side, they had engraved words in both English and Apache. "Home is where kindness lives." Thomas ran his fingers over the carving, deeply moved. "It's perfect," he said. "Just perfect." He placed it on the mantel beside the old toy horse, the two standing side by side, a symbol of the journey they had shared. The following week was filled with moments that Thomas knew he would carry forever. They repaired the old barn roof together, cooked fresh bread, and told stories under the stars. The sisters spoke about starting a small school on Apache land, a place where children could learn both modern education and their cultural traditions. "We want them to know they can belong to both worlds," Nayeli explained. Thomas listened with admiration. "That's a fine dream," he said, "and I think you'll make it real." Before long, the day came when the sisters had to leave again. This time, though, it wasn't a sad goodbye. It was a beginning. They had come back to thank him, but they left knowing they carried his values wherever they went. On their last morning, the air was cool and golden with dawn. The horses were ready and their saddlebags were packed. Thomas stood by the gate just like he had 15 years earlier, watching them prepare to ride. "You know," he said with a gentle smile, "you don't have to wait another 15 years to visit again." Taji laughed. "We won't. You'll see us every season if you're not too tired of us." "Never," he said, shaking his head. "I'll always be glad to see you two." Before mounting her horse, Nayeli hugged him tightly. "Thank you for believing in us," she whispered. "Everything we've become started here." Thomas held her hand for a moment. "You did the rest yourselves. I just gave you a place to begin." As they rode away, the sun climbed higher, spreading light across the land. Thomas watched until they were small figures against the horizon. Though they were gone from sight, he felt their presence everywhere, in the laughter echoing in the wind, in the creak of the barn door, in the warmth of the morning light. That evening, when the ranch was quiet again, Thomas sat on the porch with a cup of coffee. The sky was painted with soft colors, and the carved horse on the mantel caught the glow from the setting sun through the window. He smiled to himself, feeling a peace he hadn't known in years. He realized that some stories don't end when people leave. They continue in every heart they've touched. The girls had grown, found their way, and returned to remind him that love, when it's honest and kind, never fades. It only changes shape. Thomas knew he wouldn't live forever, but he no longer feared being forgotten. He had left something far greater behind, and not just a ranch, but a legacy of compassion. Somewhere out there, two young women were teaching children to be proud of who they were and to help others the way they had been helped. As the stars appeared one by one, Thomas leaned back in his chair and whispered, "Home is where kindness lives." The wind carried his words softly into the night, as if the land itself understood. And for the first time in a long, long while, the old rancher felt that everything, every hardship, every lonely day, every choice had been worth it.